part of the gardens, a nice sun, and it's debatable as to whether our position here is just because it's nice and sunny and this sort of thing, but we'll try and keep this quite short, even though it is nice sitting here in the sun. But on a previous video we talked about why we need a constitution. Oh, well, do we need a constitution, and if so, why? We then talked about the consequences if the constitution isn't thought out, and if things go wrong, if it's not dealt with properly.
Too rigid.
The negative side, if it's, say, too rigid, and that sort of thing, because that's the temptation of some people to think we need to make it as stiff as a board, when in actual fact it needs a bit of flexibility. The concept of a tree might get blown over in a strong enough wind while a piece of grass will bend a little bit. That's how the constitution needs to be looked at. But now I think it's beneficial to imagine we've had a constitution for the last generation. I was thinking 7 years, but I think if we go longer than 7, go for a full generation. So we've had a constitution for a generation. What would New Zealand, or what is New Zealand like now that we've had a constitution for a generation? It's been in place, it's functioned well, it's been revised every 7 years just to make sure it's fit for purpose, all this sort of thing. What is New Zealand like?
So the question is, what's our political landscape?
Yeah, political landscape, yeah.
I believe that it will be totally different to what it is now. Currently, we focus on trying to make the Treaty of Waitangi work for us. In the next generation, you're going to find that the language is going to change, the narrative is going to change.
Okay.
Our discussion will not be on treaty principles. Our discussion, political discussions, will be based around constitutional values, and that fundamentally changes as compared to our discussion, our narrative now. And why that's important to understand is we can then look to the future, or to where we are now, assuming that one generation is gone. We can then focus upon the most fundamental important values as a society. You will have one generation of New Zealanders that have grown up without our focus being on the treaty, and that changes the landscape absolutely. The legislature will still be the legislature making laws, but they will be making laws under the light of a written constitution. They will be informed by the terms of that constitution. The executive, same, they will be making executive decisions, and they will use the constitution as a beacon. The judiciary will be making decisions, constitutional decisions, right? And the language changes from treaty values, principles, to constitution values and principles. The whole of New Zealand's jurisprudence changes. Jurisprudence is the theory of law.
Yeah.
So New Zealand's jurisprudence changes, and it changes for the better if we have adopted and inspired a constitution. If the decision makers, the executive, the legislature and the judiciary have made decisions, made inspired decisions based on that written constitution, everything changes for the good. Yeah. I said before, there is a problem. Some constitutionalists believe that a constitution will be bad for us. Some have believed that we've done without it now for a long time, and why do we need it now? So I acknowledge that those are those different viewpoints, but if you look at a perspective from the position that you've lived with a constitution for some time, it is true that our political landscape will change, and I believe it will change again if we make inspired decisions and choices, and if it's flexible enough. And so we will, in my opinion, we will start evolving not as a bicultural society, we'll be evolving as a constitutional society.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
We will become, we are intertwined as two cultures, right?
Yeah.
but we still see ourselves as two cultures. Once we have a written constitution, we're committed to adopting that in as appropriately and as many aspects of our lives. We then become entwined, not so much biculturally, but constitutionally. It changes, absolutely changes. We are more inclined to approach and deal one with another on humanitarian, at a humanitarian level.
Yeah.
That's how I envision it. If that constitution will not bring us to that point, I'm absolutely opposed to any constitution then. And then we, if that be the case, we're then left to natural selection. By that I mean naturally we choose which values to adopt and not adopt. But we then have a problem that they're not enforceable. We cannot rely upon it. We cannot make an appeal to the Crown, because the Crown is still a dictatorship. It chooses what rights we have and what rights we don't have. Under a written constitution, I can see the Crown will be encouraging all decision makers to make decisions in accordance with their constitution. Everything changes. If we decide that these are the good values that we want to adopt, these are the good freedoms we want to adopt, we'll adopt it. And what that does is we discard all those freedoms that are not good for us. So what are you going to end up with? You're going to have a good social system, you're going to have good social institutions, you're going to have good political institutions, you're going to have quite a sound democratic system. I can't see bad happening. I can see more good happening for us than bad.
I think the other thing is, from the ordinary person on the street, being able to have the confidence to say, I have a constitutional right to X, Y, Z, gives you the confidence and positivity to know that for whatever that particular thing in the Constitution is, you have a right to that. That cannot be taken away. And that's not something we have at the moment. A lot of people are starting to realise that there are certain things we assume are rights, but they're not really. They are rights that we like to claim, but in actual fact they're just rights we're allowed. It's like being a kid and allowed to play with certain toys, that mum and dad could take those toys away from you if they felt like it.
Is that their sufferance, right?
Yeah.
So what we're going to have in a generation living under a written constitution is that we're going to have almost every person in New Zealand having an understanding of their constitutional rights. It means that the education system, they will be required to train up our youth under a written constitution and what their values and rights are. You're going to find that we're going to have a society of constitutional lawyers. That's a scary thought. I won't be able to charge anybody. But we will know our rights. We will know, if I have rights, you have a duty to uphold those rights. And a constitution also creates privileges. If I have privileges, nobody else has. You have obligations and responsibilities. So it goes from
Just wait for the plane to go over for a minute.
Okay.
Just tip it. Just go low.
I'm in favour of Hofield's theoretical view of democracy and rights. He said if a person has rights, then another person that doesn't have those rights has a duty. He also said that if someone has greater rights or privileges, it creates an obligation. And it also creates immunity.
And that's the other thing that people need to realise, that
if I could add, that's the reason why the treaty is so scary for people, because people who are not party to that treaty see that Māori don't have rights, they have privileges, and they feel that that's wrong. And they feel that Māori, because they have those privileges, they have immunities, and they see that as being wrong. We can't get rid of the treaty. It's formed our political identity. It's with us. But what we can do is we can adopt the treaty and adopt its principles, and that helps to inform us constitutionally right,
Yeah.
and we under that constitution give everybody the same rights, powers, privileges
Yeah.
and immunities as everybody else. When we talk about Māori rights, we're talking about collective rights. Every Māori in New Zealand have all these rights, but as an individual, my rights is under a written constitution will be the same as your rights.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that people need to keep in mind, and this should go through society already, but it doesn't always work this way, that along with rights come responsibilities.
Yep.
And a lot of people who currently stand up and claim, I have a right to X, Y, Z, are also forgetting that they actually have certain responsibilities along with that right. Just the same as the people on the other side of the argument have a responsibility to uphold those rights just as much as anyone else. You as an individual who are claiming that right have a responsibility to do whatever relates, you know, in the case of just about anything, it could be your responsibility is to not cause other people grief, or the biggest one, not take away other people's rights.
Or do no harm.
Yeah, do no harm.
We have a phrase for that in Māoridom, in our culture. It's called kia ora.
Yeah. Yes, because we've discussed this before.
Correct. And for those who didn't see the clip before, I'll explain what that is. When I say to you kia ora, I am wishing you to be well.
Yeah.
But in my wishing you to be well, I create an obligation on my part to contribute to your wellness. As tangata whenua, at this particular marae, when you come to visit, we have this discussion and we find out, are you a friend or a foe? If we find and determine that you're a friend, we say, how do I have a cup of tea?
Yeah.
And we are required to treat you as honoured guests.
Yeah.
Now that's called manaakitanga.
Yeah.
But what we're trying to say to you is, as a friend, we're saying kia ora.
Yeah.
Welcome. We're going to treat you as our honoured guests. And that's everything built into that notion of that phrase. That's what it really means.
That would also explain why, and this can be confusing to non-speakers, why kia ora is often used as a thank you in the place of the English version of thank you. Because when you understand what that phrase actually means, you can understand why it's used both as a greeting and as a thank you.
I'll add furthermore, if you come to Aotearoa here, and if you are a visitor, and I say kia ora, it means come and have a cup of tea and we will part as friends.
Yeah.
When you leave, when you say kia ora, what you're saying to me is you're saying to me, thank you for your hospitality. I will return the favour one day.
Yeah.
When you say kia ora to me, you're saying I will return the favour one day.
Yeah.
So it creates an obligation on both parties, and that's called reciprocity.
Cool. Well, thanks very much for that. That's been very enlightening, and I hope that's helped a few people look at the whole concept of a constitution differently.
If I could
more positively.
Yeah, if I can finally add, under a written constitution, everybody will have equal mana,
Yeah.
equal privileges, equal rights, equal duties, equal obligations. Everybody will be equal, and everybody will be free.
Yeah.
Absolute freedom to engage, to make decisions and choices, whatever those decisions and choices, and you can rest assured that your neighbour, me, will come to your aid in time of need.
Yeah.
And we can get to that point under a written constitution. We can't get to that point without it.
No.
And it encourages trust at a level of trust within us we cannot get to at the moment. We have fear, and the treaty debates have created fear.
I think the big reason for that is also because you know where things stand with a constitution, whereas at the moment,
Certainty, there's uncertainty now.
Yeah.
So I would say that in one generation post adoption of a written constitution, we will probably, if we commit to acting in accordance with its highest values, you'll find that we will get close to a utopian society.